Oh, with great interest, because I think it is what Enda just said. It's about whether or not we get a deal that will bring some stability to the oil market, or we don't get a deal and it adds more instability to the oil market. Russia is the largest oil producer in the world. They are a larger oil producer than Saudi Arabia or the United States. So they matter on the margin. And if the world is trying to either sanction them or ostracize them, it matters. If we don't get a deal, President Trump has opened the door to potentially sanctioning Russian oil, and it would matter at the margin.
So, Jim, for Jackson Hole this year, just pivoting here to that economic symposium, the theme is labor markets in transition, demographics, productivity, and macroeconomic policy. What are you expecting the discussions to sound like at Jackson Hole this week?
Simply, what's happened in the U.S. over the last 120 days is probably the most underreported story right now. The border is closed. That's not underreported. The population growth of the United States has slowed to potentially the slowest point in American history, because all of our population growth is really coming from immigration, and we have none right now. President Trump even went as far to say we have net negative immigration, where more people are leaving the country than entering, and that might be the first time in American history. So why does that matter? Because of the payroll report that we saw last month that's sparking all this debate about a rate cut. If you have no growth in the population of the country, you're going to have no growth in jobs. And that's to be expected. Cutting interest rates to stimulate growth back to some 80,000, 100,000, 120,000 jobs assumes that there's a certain population growth in the country. If that is not the case, all rate cuts do is create inflation. This is what the Fed is going to talk about: labor market productivity and demographics. And what does that mean for the labor market? And I'll tease you, the American Enterprise Institute put out a paper on this last month. They suggested that by next year, if this state of population growth near zero holds, that any payroll report above zero might be enough jobs for the United States. Now, we would think of it as a recession, or we would think of it as something terrible, because we're still used to a country that has a modest level of population growth. But now with the border closed, it really does have a big impact on economic growth.
Jim, I think there are a lot of implications here, not to mention, of course, what happens to Social Security and the workers who pay into that as the working population ages, but also just when it comes to growth in general. Like you said, immigrants, from a growth perspective and from a population growth perspective, have been keeping the U.S. afloat for years because we're not having enough babies. What does it mean for actual productivity in the U.S.?
Well, it's going to be a drag on productivity, I think, initially. And the big hope is that AI is going to offset that somewhere down the line. Now, count me as one of those that does think that AI is as big as the internet, or it's going to be bigger than the internet. But I also believe the Bill Gates line, too, that he said about technological advances, that over the next couple of years, technology will probably do less than what you think. But over the next 10 years, it'll probably do more than what you think. So we've shut the border now. There's no population growth now. Will AI come in later this year, next year to offset that? Probably not. How about in 5 or 8 or 10 years? Probably will. But over the next several years, it's not going to be able to, make up for that lower population growth. Remember, the biggest driver of economic growth for any country, you got to start with your population growth.
Yeah.
If your country's growing, you're going to have more growth. If your country is not growing, you're only going to be able to have growth to the extent that you have productivity. Beyond that, you're not going to have any much more growth.
Right. Look at China and look at Japan for examples of this. The question I have, though, is about the actual jobs that AI can help augment and the workers that are not coming to the U.S. now as a result of immigration policy. AI is not going to build houses or be construction workers. AI is not going to be food delivery workers. AI is not going to be plumbers.
No, it's not going to be all of those, but also, that is a portion of the labor growth that we've had from immigrants. They've also taken white-collar jobs or office jobs. That's really what AI is looking to try and automate, is that. Let's also keep in mind, too, and I'll quote Bob Gordon, who's a professor at Northwestern University, who's done some work on technological growth, that any technological advance like AI will lead usually to a net creation of jobs. And to put it in, stark terms, there's been estimates that AI over the next decade plus might eliminate 50 million jobs. It'll probably create 60 or 70 million jobs. The problem is, I don't know the 60 or 70 million jobs it's going to create because those are in industries that don't exist. I can identify the 50 million jobs it might do away with. You could start with automated driving, and you could start with the job of driver, which is the most popular job in the United States. I think it's like 12 million people list on their tax reforms that their job is driver, whether it's bus driver, taxi driver, forklift driver, or anything in between. And so, yeah, I understand those jobs will go away, but it will lower the cost of transportation, and it will open up whole new industries that don't exist. Think of what the App Store did a couple of years ago when Steve Jobs held up the Apple iPhone 1. Did anybody say, oh, that's the end of the taxi industry, or that's going to forever change the hotel industry with Airbnb within 3 or 4 years? That's what technology changes do. They create jobs as much as they displace jobs.